Around a month or two ago, I was at a train station waiting for the train to pull up so I could go home. But as I'm just waiting there, like my hands are in my pockets, I'm looking around, I see this one girl who I know, but I haven't spoken to her in over a year. Immediately I think, hey, I should go talk to her. I should see how she's doing. So I go initiate a conversation. We start catching up, but then the train pulls into the station. So me and her, we hop on, we sit together, and we start talking. But roughly like 2 to 3 minutes into this conversation, I blank out. I have no clue what else to say, and a silence begins to develop between us. For me, instead of being something cool that I'm used to, I get uncomfortable very, very quickly. Instead of just thinking, oh, this is nice, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting judged by the people around me because the train is packed, right? It's rush hour, everybody's going home. The train is packed, it's silent, and I feel extremely nervous, extremely uncomfortable. So I force the conversation. I come up with this random train of thought, random topic of conversation, and start forcing myself to talk about it. When I do so, she starts talking a little bit as well. But the conversation's on shaky ground, right? And inevitably it just dies out again, like a candle spluttering out. By this time, I'm starting to sweat a little bit. I keep redoing this over and over and over again because we have about 10 minutes to go before we reach the final station. And just the thought of not saying anything in all those 10 minutes makes me feel like uncomfortable on the inside. But the more I'm doing this, the worse it feels. Rather than just allowing that silence to stretch out, I'm forcing myself to overshare at this point because I can't think of anything else. I start talking about my fears, the problems I have in my life, the things that I'm working on in the present moment. When in reality, I don't really need to say any of those things. So as the train ride goes on, it's just feeling more and more awkward because of the situation I'm putting myself into, where I'm saying more and more uncomfortable things. It makes me feel like I gotta keep talking or else something bad's gonna happen. 10 minutes later, by the time we pull up into the final station, as we get out, we go over to the buses, right? And she looks a little bit disgusted. I don't blame her, I'm not butthurt about it, but she looks a little bit disgusted by the fact that I just couldn't shut up, right? And I feel bad about it too. The way I felt after coming out of the train, I just thought, yo, what? Why did I say all those things? Why did I not just shut up? But it was too late, right? She sees her bus, she looks at me, she says, bye, and then she turns away and does not look back. She walks away quickly, hops on her bus, and that's when I realize, like, I slap myself on the head. I go wait for my bus beside my bus stop. I just think, shoot, why was I not comfortable with silence? Like, that would have solved every single problem that I had in that present moment, right? If I hadn't said anything, that would have been so much better. Like, looking back on it now, it wasn't that bad, right? I'm not butthurt about it. It was actually kind of funny now that I think about it. But if I could change one thing in that situation, it would be just shutting myself up, not forcing myself to speak because there was no reason to. I wasn't able to be silent. And that was the biggest problem of that encounter, the biggest mistake that I made. Because when I wasn't able to enjoy the silence, where I wasn't comfortable with it, my mind was constantly thinking of everything outside of my control, everything that I was afraid of, instead of just relaxing into the present moment. Because there's this like idea that silence is a bad thing. And I just want to preface this that I'm not perfect at conversations. I'm not an authority on this matter. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience and what I think about this. Because I'm a kid. And for me, silence has been something I've been uncomfortable with for a very long time. Yet, I've realized whenever I'm just present, whenever I just let the conversation flow the way it does, no matter if there is some silence, no matter if it's a really long conversation without any breaks in the middle, I've realized that silence is not a bad thing. That sometimes shutting up, not yapping, not saying more than is necessary, not forcing yourself to keep things going, it's useful. It allows me to just relax into the conversation, to not worry about what the other person will think of me. Because I feel like a lot of people are afraid of silence because they think the other person is judging them. That if they don't have something to say at every single moment, they are boring and therefore nobody's going to want to talk to them or stay around with them in a conversation. Yet I've realized that this isn't true. That silence, obviously, I'm not talking about like a 10-minute silence, but say you say something, the other person responds, you don't have anything more to add. The silence that comes from that, for a few moments, for a few seconds, it's okay. Nothing is going to happen. Simply thinking instead of impulsively saying something is a lot more effective than you think. Rather than forcing yourself into being impulsive, like I said, when you think about what you're going to say, when you actually just realize, oh, I don't need to say anything, nothing bad is going to happen if I don't break the silence right now, you can just relax and the other person notices it. Kind of sets the tone for the conversation, because if a silence does show up and you're just relaxed, you're breathing deeply, you're in the present moment, you're not forcing anything to go along, more often than not, the conversation naturally just restarts by itself. The other person may say something, or a new, unformed thought just comes into your mind, and you start talking about it. The thing is, you don't need to say something at every single moment, because when you are impulsively speaking, at least in my experience, the way I felt, the way I've acted in terms of other people, it just made me feel like I had no control over my mouth. Other people didn't want to continue the conversation with me. I felt very, very tense, very anxious whenever I faced silence. It just didn't help me at all. Right? It was one of the habits I had to unlearn when I started talking to more people within my life. From when I put myself out there, when I really started to practice this trait of speaking to people, this was one thing I had to get comfortable with. Where silence is okay. You don't need to fill every single moment with some words. You don't need to pad everything. Sometimes silence with another person is chill, where you can just relax in the other person's company, where they know you don't need to say everything. You're not anxious about every single word that you're saying. Remember, all conversations end. It's inevitable, whether it's a really long conversation or it's a really short conversation. All conversations come to an end, and that is okay. You don't need to force it. You don't need to keep things going if silence is what's natural in the conversation. But the only way to really combat this, the only way to really improve your skills and to get comfortable with silence, I'd recommend just speaking with clarity. Speaking when you have something to say, not when you feel like you need to say something. When you make it a choice, when you make it a conscious decision to talk only when you need to, only when it's pertinent, you'll find that you say a bit more quality things rather than just impulse driven, whatever it is, right? That's what I have to say. This is my personal experience. Once again, I'm no master at this, right? So if you have anything to add on this, leave a comment below. But yeah, be comfortable with silence. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe if you're interested. Peace.